All right. All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Behind the Back podcast. We are your hosts, trying to keep it together. I'm Marcos Conan Negron, and beside me here is Ben the Jetterettes. Ben, forget about the game real quick before we do that. How's your Christmas? Did you have a good Christmas?
It was wonderful, man. My
Yeah.
Christmas was beautiful. I spent it with family. It was everything I wanted and more. It was just that one last present under the tree. I opened it and it was a pile of dog poop.
So, Ben, on Monday night, yes, you didn't get, that present under the tree was the San Francisco 49ers losing at home to the Baltimore Ravens. Now, watching that game, and then I didn't catch it until the end. I had to watch the condensed replays, and we'll talk a little bit about the end here because I was curious. But what'd you think? Because I don't think it was 33-19. What do you think about this game?
Yeah, it was an eye opener for sure. But one thing I said last week was I'd be okay with them losing this game, especially considering like if it's going to happen, I'd want it to happen now versus week, 2 of the playoffs after we have the first round bye and like it's like if you're going to have these pains, let's have them now so we can figure out what they were. And we have 2 weeks, to evaluate against teams that they're not bad, but they're not great. The Rams are on a roll right now. So that's going to be
looking sneaky.
That's going to be fun. That's going to be a fun matchup, especially they could be the upset team for us. So, it sucked losing that game the way we did. Brock throwing 4 picks was pretty unfortunate, but I've got to say, I don't put all those picks on Brock.
Agreed.
So I put his first pick on him. I think that was a bad read. I think that at the same time, Kyle Hamilton baited him. Why? Because Kyle Hamilton is an amazing safety.
He's awesome.
There's no beating around that bush. Like his job is to do exactly what he did in this game, and that's get 2 interceptions. And he was a great player for them. He's been all season. So he definitely baited Purdy into throwing that ball. Purdy probably could have held it for a little bit longer, and Debo would have been wide open in the corner. So, there's something there for him to develop off of. The second and third. So the second pick was the corner blitzed and made a hell of a play. Just tipped the ball up in the air. Another interception. Third one hit Kittle almost in the chest. It was kind of in the shoulder, and it popped straight up in the air again. And another interception, right? And then the fourth one, Purds was hit while trying to dump it off to CMC. The only thing he ever does is these dump off passes. So, obviously they read that. But it was a lot of unfortunate things that went really well for the Ravens and didn't go well for the Niners. And I thought it was going to be different considering how the beginning of that game went. With that safety and the ref like falling over, and it was just this whole situation where it was like, wow, I've never seen anything like that. I was like, all right, so the Niners are destined to win this game. No, that's not what happened. I will say, like, I'm actually feeling good about this game. When I think about it, it sucked in the moment. It sucked on what should have been victory Tuesday. Like it was not fun. But when I really step back from this game and I look at it, there's a lot of really good things that happened in this game for the Niners.
Agreed. And listen, like, the safety play was funny because, like, I don't even put that all on the ref because as a referee, I don't think you anticipate Lamar running 20 yards from the line of scrimmage backwards. So you're just like in a weird situation. And again, I agree with you completely on the Purdy picks. I mean, you watched Purdy. If you watched Purdy's 4 interception, he wasn't the only QB to have 4 interceptions this weekend. If anybody watched the Vikings versus Lions game, Nick Mullins threw 4 interceptions. Those were 4 interceptions versus like Brock's interceptions in that sense.
And also just a little something to build off that. So let's talk about a few QBs who in the history of football have had 4+ interceptions, or rather 4+ interception games in their career. Okay. Brady had 6 games where he had 4 picks. Peyton had 6. Peyton Manning, that is. Marino had 2. Breeze had 2. And Joe Montana had 1. So you just can't put this kid who's 24 years old. Shout out Brock, happy birthday, man! It was
Oh
his
yeah,
birthday, I
happy
think,
birthday.
on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Shout out to him, 24 years old, and yeah, he had a bad game, but it was good that he did because he's going to grow off of it, and that's what he's looking at this game as is a growing point.
Right. And I again, to follow up on that, like, it wasn't like he was playing horribly either. Like, his average yards per target was 11 yards deep, like, or, per catch was, the plays were happening and they were moving the ball. And again, that one that bounced off of Kittle, I do think that, number one, when he's scrambling out of the pocket like that, you know, most times when that situation happens and Kittle would, or, and it hits and it drops, it normally drops down, right? Not drops up. But he also, I do think that, like, maybe you throw it away there. Maybe you don't take the risk and throw
Yeah,
it back into the guys. But again, plenty of QBs do that. So I'm not going to, like, say that was a bad decision, because most of the times making that decision, it is a drop. Like, it's a 2nd and 10, not an interception. But I think he played fine. And one thing that is going to worry me is just, like, now this is back-to-back weeks with him taking stingers. And I do wonder how that's going to affect him moving on, because this is his first full season. It wasn't last year where he came in halfway through. And, I wonder if the toll of, the struggling offensive line with injuries as well, if that's going to play a role moving forward. But we'll talk about that in a bit. I did think that the Niners being as close as they were the whole time, you guys were down 21 with like 7 minutes to go, and you guys were still in it. Like, the way the game was going, had the Ravens just not gotten short fields the whole time, it would have been a completely different game. It's just hard when you make those many mistakes and the other team gets way more chances to capitalize. It's just,
yeah,
we talked about this when the Eagles Jets game, like, not many teams, if any, like, it was a really low percentage of teams win when they have 4 or more turnovers in general. So it's just like, that's
exactly.
just hard to do. So the Niners shot themselves in the foot, but I don't think it was, entirely. So this wasn't a blueprint game. This wasn't like, oh, the Ravens figured out the Niners. Bounces went their way. The Ravens played well. I'm not going to take anything away from how well they played.
Absolutely.
But watching this, I'm just like, if I just don't think they were going to get 4 turnovers again if they were to meet again. So
Yeah, and that's kind of where my head is at too, because when you kind of like building off what you said, when you have a short field on majority of your drives that you scored on, you should be scoring. I mean, especially as the Ravens right now and how good they are offensively and defensively. Like, if we're going to give them that short of a field, I would expect them to score. And, they, credit to them, they played a hell of a game, and they also made us pay when it mattered. Where I find a lot of confidence in a rematch if we see them in the Super Bowl, because where we would see them again this season, and I want to see them again, is in the Super Bowl. I'm pretty confident they're going to come out in the AFC, barring any random crazy game, right? Where I have some confidence in that is in this game, the Niners led in passing yards, rushing yards. They outgained the Ravens by 86 yards. They averaged more yards per play. Like, what it really came down to was those turnovers. And like, yeah, the Niners have a great defense. Maybe it's not as great as the Ravens defense, but it's a good enough defense. You can hold teams with a field of, 70 yards and up. But
right.
when you're giving them 50 yards and closer, it's pretty damn hard to stay in a ball game.
No, agreed. And so the turnovers were obviously a huge factor. I did want to, like, how much of it do you think is Kyle Shanahan? Because obviously the narrative got, continued. Oh man, he's down 8+ in the fourth quarter. Oh, let's show the record. He's on, he hasn't won yet. And I just wonder, like, he's not the one. He's out there making plays. Do you think that, like, especially when the lead started to grow a bit, did you think that, like, he was playing too conservative? Because when you, I think it was like the first, after the third interception or after the fourth interception, they had a series where it was run, 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 play action pass, right? Like, it almost seemed like they were trying to go away from it a little bit. And I think that's like that's the whole dilemma with the whole Niners team, right? You guys are dominant when you're ahead because you can just feed McCaffrey the whole time. But then a running back kind of is rendered not as effective when you guys are down by more.
Right.
So do you think he was being a little conservative? I do have a stat with those fourth quarter numbers, but I was just curious what you thought, once the game kind of fell apart a bit. Like, what do you think how he performed this game?
I would put a lot of this loss on Kyle. It wasn't all to do with him. But especially like how we started the game, it was all pass plays. Like we were leaning on the pass very heavily to start the game. And I love Brock. I will back that. Like I trust Brock with the ball in his hands, even after watching the game that he just had. The problem was I'm going to trust Brock a lot more, and I'm going to trust any quarterback a lot more when you can get your run game going, because that's football. You get the run game going, it opens up the rest of the field for you. It opens up your entire playbook, right? And that was something that early on we weren't seeing. We weren't seeing CMC have that impact on a team that he could have had that impact against. And so it was starting to become predictable. And by halftime, it was extremely predictable, especially knowing every team knows now when Kyle Shanahan's down where he goes.
Right.
It's evident. And so, those linebackers are lined up to stop a run play every single time. And that was just a recipe for disaster at that point.
And there's only so much you can do when your offensive line continuously gets hurt. And especially Trent Williams, again, it adds to the whole thing.
He's okay.
Yes, he is okay. I heard about that. Yeah, so I know he wouldn't miss his Commanders revenge game. So
Nah, he can't.
But they are 0-4 now when he doesn't start and finish a game.
Right.
But in terms of the whole, I want to talk about like the whole narrative with Kyle Shanahan. Like when you're coaching down 8+ in the fourth, that's hard in general to come back from. In most cases, I think people is just like, oh, it's a touchdown, it's a possession. So I found this tweet from Mike Sando. So he emphasized, so the Niners are 0-38, down 8+ in the fourth quarter. So all teams in this situation, and I forget how far back he went, but he went a lot of games. All teams win 7% of the time in this situation, with a collective record of 98 wins, 1,337 losses, and 4 ties. So to think that this is like you should be able to come back from this all the time is kind of an issue. I think the best team with that record, the best winning percentage under those circumstances, are the Kansas City Chiefs with a 6-14 record.
Oh, of course.
So right, exactly, and that is recent history because Mahomes is awesome, but it's also like the next best is Green Bay historically with 7-34 record, which is only 17%. So it goes from 30% to 17%. And it's just, I don't think that stat is fair to use on Kyle Shanahan. I do think the other stat when they did it, down 3 or more, and he's like 4-20 something or something like that. Like he doesn't have a good record there either. I think that's a little more telling. I'm curious, the Niners have had such success in the Kyle Shanahan era, but this has always seemed to be the underlying issue. Like, how much more as a fan can you take of always being really good in certain situations, and most situations when you have a lead, but then, when you need your team to bounce back, they for some reason never have an answer. But at the same time, there always seems to be a little caveat with it. There always seems to be an injury. There always seems to be, something else that isn't just Kyle Shanahan getting out coached.
I would say I can take as much to the point where we start losing more than we're winning, if that makes sense. Like when we start losing more games than we are winning, that'll become more of an issue to me. Mm-hmm. The Niners right now, they have an extremely good record. And when they're not fighting injuries under the Kyle Shanahan era, and we've had the players that we have, we've been a very successful team. Yes, those losses and the way that they happen, and the fact that we can't bounce back when we're down is concerning. Absolutely. But when I look at a season like this, where there hasn't been that many games where we're down and have to make a comeback, it doesn't bug me as much.
Exactly.
It is concerning. It absolutely is, because I look at the playoffs, those situations, like any given Sunday happens that much more, and that it's that much heavier in the playoffs, right?
Yeah, the
And
game
so
really changes.
absolutely. So it's that much more concerning going into the playoffs and then looking at a potential Super Bowl, game. Especially with Kyle Shanahan and how that Chiefs game ended. So, I would say right now I can take some more. So if he, in the playoffs, if he does a similar thing, I might feel a different type of way at that
Okay.
point.
No, that's fair. And I do think, and again, there's not a single NFL season where each contender doesn't have their own flaw, their own little thing that kind of follows them. Like the Cowboys, it's they can't win on the road. The Eagles is they're not the same. Like the Lions is they can't play in a dome. Like things of that issue, right? So I think still, if I were to take anything away from this game, is I don't really see it so much as a referendum on the Niners. I still think the Niners are the clear-cut favorites in the NFC. They're the team that we can trust the most. Um, is the biggest question mark, in my opinion, is the biggest question mark Brock? Yes, but that's not his fault because he is out of that team. He is the most inexperienced in that spot. So I do, that doesn't mean that I believe that he can't pull it off because I still think you guys are the clear-cut favorites. But that will be something to look out for. And I'm sure all the Brock Purdy haters were really excited to see Sam Darnold come in and make a, do, make a couple plays, but not, they didn't finish the job. So what do you think, like, that kind of talk needs to stop?
You know what? Yeah, let me pop off for a second. So I'm going to address you, Brock Purdy haters, right now for a second, because y'all are really weird. All right. Listen to how this sounds. Brock Purdy, last pick in the draft, 24 years old, one of the most humble people and players that you'll ever meet and talk to, right? Week in and week out, he shows up and he plays his part. He leads the league in God knows how many categories, whatever stats, you name it, okay? Obviously, those went down. No, he's not leading the league in interceptions, so get out of here with that.
That's my
But
QB.
people are out here hoping and praying that Brock has a bad week. They've been doing it for over a year now. And they've had to wait this long, curled up in a corner with their little blankie and their little pillow, waiting for him to have this bad game. He finally has this bad game, and they all come out of hiding. They all came out and they're like, this is who Brock Purdy is. This is who we expected. Oh, so where were you the last 19 weeks, with exception to the 3 weeks here that we, this season? But like, where were you in all the games where he popped off and had these MVP caliber statistical games? Where were you in all the games where he was the guy, when he was playing his top level? Oh, you were silent because you had nothing to say. I'm really sick of hearing these people talk about him. And it doesn't stop at the fans. It actually starts with the media. The media, the way they trash this 24-year-old who is still learning the game of football. He doesn't even have 2 full seasons under his belt, and they're trashing him for one game where he has 4 picks. Guarantee you they weren't doing that with Brady. They weren't doing that with Peyton Manning. They weren't doing that with all these other elite quarterbacks, but they won't give it to him. Why? Because he was the last pick in the draft. Why? Because he's got a great supporting cast around him. That's not his fault. That's not his fault at all. It's just, I'm sick of it.
No, and that well said. I agree with everything you said, and also at the same time, those people who talk trash about this past game also want to forget that during the past 6 weeks since the bye, he had the most historic 6-game run. He had better stats than any other QB in the NFL that's ever done it. So it's like, again, the fact that he is so young, I think the only thing that people were upset about, well, not the only, there's a lot of things they were upset about, I guess, but the main talking point was he shouldn't be the MVP, right?
I get that.
And again, that's the thing, right? So I think people,
I will build off of this when you're done.
Perfect. I think that people want to say that, oh, he might not be the most valuable player on his team, but then all of a sudden does that not make him good? And I think, first he was the first 4,000-yard passer since Jeff Garcia, right? He just broke that record for,
Yeah.
so he statistically has been the best Niner quarterback in the past 23 years. And they're just going to ignore it because, again, it is the draft status. It's maybe his build. They just think, oh, he doesn't feel like a quarterback. But then when you watch it, you just choose to ignore it. And you're like, oh, it's the play calling. It's this and it's that. But then you'll credit guys like Jimmy for being successful in the system. But when Brock's successful, you're not calling him a good quarterback, or at least a quarterback capable of winning a Super Bowl. They thought Jimmy was they thought so long as Jimmy doesn't mess up, this team can win the Super Bowl. And it almost doesn't even seem like they're giving Brock that kind of credit either. They're saying that Brock is going to cost them a Super Bowl, is what they're saying. And the problem is, they set these expectations so high that if he doesn't win a Super Bowl, everyone's just going to think that they're right and that he won't be able to accomplish anything, even though he's in his second full season and he will have plenty more chances to get a Super Bowl.
Yeah, so it almost takes away from the fact that he is the best last pick ever, because he has such high standards because of the team he's on, because of where they put the Niners, because of like all these different scenarios and situations. And it sucks. And yet this kid, this is what's amazing about him, is I know he hears this, because the players in that locker room hear it and they defend him to their wits' end about it, right? And so you know that kid hears it. You know that Brock is hearing this talk. And yet every week he comes out, he will have his best week ever coming up. Let's say he has like a, I don't know, 6 or 7 touchdown game, right? Let's just say he's not gonna address the media and be like, I told you, like, I'm that guy, I'm him. No, he's gonna go up to the podium and be like, yeah, man, I did my job, and like the guys around me, they really pulled through. Like my team was awesome today. Why? Because he's humble. It reminds me a lot of like Jalen Hurts. Like it's that kind of winning mentality, which is why I will die on that hill that Brock he was a MVP candidate and was the MVP favorite going into this week. Now on that topic, he's not the MVP anymore, because when you have that kind of a game, it puts it out there, right?
At least this late in the season, yeah.
Right. And on that big of a stage. So then I look at the other side of it and I'm like, okay, Dak played like garbage. Jalen hasn't had that great of a season. And now Lamar is the MVP favorite. But I'm sorry, 4 weeks ago, look, I love Lamar. I'm going to state that right now. I love Lamar. He's a dog. I love watching him play. And a few days ago, I said, yeah, he's got my MVP vote. But then I really looked into it and I was like, 5-6 weeks ago, he was nowhere in the picture.
I agree with that. Yeah.
He had a great, like 5, 6, maybe even 7 weeks. I'll give him that. Where his team went on an absolute rampage, and he has played extremely well. When I look at this last game, I can't tell you that he played like an MVP. He was gifted great field advantage a lot. He only got two touchdowns, at least passing. I'm not sure I can't remember if he got a rushing.
I think he did.
Did he?
I think he did.
Dang, I know he scrambled for that late second quarter, which was awesome to see. Like, it was crazy. That was a standard Lamar play. But look, nothing to me in that game stood out to me as he's the MVP favorite. What this week proved to me is that the MVP, if the NFL is in the right place for this award, the MVP is not going to be a quarterback this year. There are too many quarterbacks out. There are too many quarterbacks playing poorly this year. You look at guys like Tyreek Hill and Christian McCaffrey, they are the front runners. They have to be the front runners at this point. Like, it's kind of not close, in my opinion.
No, that's fair. And I think the CMC argument will be made if CMC blows up these last 2 games, right? That's what he's going to have to do. But The only argument I can say for Lamar, I think it's because this year is so weird that there's no clear cut. Because normally by this point of the season, there's always at least two people left there where like it's very clear who's the MVPs, right? This year there's so much parity, a lot of inconsistency. Some of the like guys like Dak have been playing bad teams. Same with Tua, he's been playing bad teams, so they're not getting that kind of credit. And Brock has beaten great teams, but they don't believe he's the best player. And Lamar is the only argument he really has is he is the entire engine of that team offensively. Offensively, because their defense is stacked. That helps a ton. But when he's missing his top pass catcher in Mark Andrews, and he has been missing him for an extreme amount of time, his supporting cast has improved, but it's Odell Beckham, Zay Flowers, who's awesome. I like Zay Flowers, and Isaiah Likely's kind of emerged, and he will make the dynamic plays, and he has developed as a passer in a way that I don't think he's playing a little differently now. He's going to win if they beat Miami and secure the number 1 seed. He will most likely be the MVP. And I just think that this year it's not going to be because of his stats, because his stats don't support that he's an MVP. His rushing TDs are down, his passing numbers aren't that great, and again, he just does what it takes to win, and the team does. They haven't lost a game by more than a touchdown this year, like at all. And they've lost 3 games in really fluky fashion, in the sense that like they were dumb losses that the team kind of messed up on. So I don't know, and I think in a season that doesn't have a clear winner, because everybody has flaws for some reason. There's no Tom Brady, and Mahomes has played at a level that's been so weak. Like, I don't know. I think that if there's anyone that's been consistent in terms of just being the engine of their team, it's been Lamar. But CMC,
I get that.
Yeah, but CMC, if let's say he gets those 2,000 yards, he already has more touchdowns than AP did during his MVP season, and it's like I don't think Tyreek will, because if Tyreek will, then Tua's going to get a boost. They're hurting each other. So
one last thing that I'm going to actually argue with you on here is more so like, if everybody wants to say the supporting cast is the full reason for Purdy's success, like, okay, then when I look at Lamar Jackson's yards, he's 15th in the league. Touchdowns, he's got 19 of them, tied for 14th in the league.
Right.
Interceptions, he's got 7 of them, so not bad. And then he's got a QBR rating that's good for 8th in the league. And I look at those and I'm like, that's not MVP level, kind of like we were saying, right? It's not coming down to the statistics. But then I think about it, well, why is his yards down, but they're winning every game? Defense.
Right.
Defense. Okay. Purdy. Supporting cast. It's no different, guys. It's just a different it's a different excuse for why this quarterback does or doesn't deserve whatever status they're at, right?
No, it makes perfect sense.
That's the argument that I've been trying to portray to everybody this whole year, is there's a reason for every quarterback's success, and you can't take that away from them.
Mm-hmm.
Lamar has a great defense.
Yeah, but I do believe that, if anybody were to say who's the best player on this team, on the Ravens team, everybody would say it's Lamar.
Absolutely.
So then when you look at Brock and the Niners, some of the arguments that's been made is, when you think about the Niners, who would you pick as the best player on that team? Because you got Trent Williams, who's awesome in general. He could be the best player in the league if they gave it to offensive tackles. And then you got CMC. I don't think Debo's at that high of a level where he would be considered better than his QB. I don't think he elevates Brock to that level. His yak yards are awesome, but Kittle maybe, but that would have been like 2 or 3 years ago, Kittle, where he was doing absolutely everything for this team. So I guess and listen, like, I believe in the statistics portion of it, and I watch a lot of the Niners games. I think a lot of these people say that, they want to look at the stats, but they don't really watch everything as close. They're not watching every snap. And we like to review our team's games every single week, which is nice. But when I watch the Niners, there's not a moment in my head, at least, where I'm like, oh, we're gonna rattle Purdy and like he's gonna mess up. Like
Right.
he has to mess up. Like he does it on his own. I don't think that he will though. I'm afraid of this team regardless. That if like I don't how to describe it, because I'm not saying that I fear Purdy, but I fear the Niners, and I don't fear them less because they have Purdy. So I don't
Mm-hmm.
see why he would have to get punished in that sense either. Because
Yeah,
Jimmy couldn't do, like, the argument is, would Jimmy be able to do something in this system? He'd be able to do something, but I don't think he would have the success that Brock is having in the system. And again, Lamar is a completely different kind of player where the offense revolves around the run game and him executing and making plays with what he has. And if he had these receivers, Debo and Ayuk, versus the guys that he has, how would his success look? I'm not sure. And, when you lose his George Kittle and Mark Andrews, that, and again, you can't control who gets hurt and who doesn't. So it's like, I think this year will be the only off year where it's going to be very narrative driven.
yeah,
So it's like, it's not going to be purely stats. It's going to be, oh, Lamar did this in a season like this, and he not carried, but he was the main reason that the Ravens were successful in a lot of these games, even though their defense has been stout the whole time. But, you don't get MVPs for defense, even though guys like Myles Garrett could deserve it. Guys like Nick Bosa, guys like those guys could totally earn MVP because in theory they could be. So
for sure.
it's weird.
I would even put Jason Kelsey in that picture just for his impact.
Kelsey and Johnson, like, for sure. The Eagles are nothing without them. I agree completely.
Right.
So with that, are there any final thoughts on the game in general?
Yeah. Niners fans, get over it. This was a really good game. For the Niners to lose. If there was going to be one this year, at least this late in the year, I would want it to be this one, and you should too, because there was some really good growing points for a 24-year-old quarterback who's got a lot to learn. And honestly, the Ravens didn't get a blueprint on how to beat us whatsoever. They really didn't. This was not a Niners team that I expect to see in the playoffs or the Super Bowl. So keep your heads up. Let's move on to the next week, and that's got to be the mentality that this team has, and I know they will. They're going to bounce back.
I agree. I think it was a good wake up call in that sense. Every team needs games like this, and every team has games like this. And again, the Niners don't turn the ball over 4 times. That's just not what they do. And
5.
yeah, so it's a 5. Right. Sorry, I was focusing on that. That's true. They did get the one at the end.
Get the number right, damn it.
Right. So you're right. So yeah, that's just not going to happen. So apparently that's the only way you can beat the Niners is either if they turn the ball over 5 times or if their stars are hurt. So it's,
that game still could have been an 8-point game if we punched it in when we were on the 1-yard line
with the 2-minute warning. I was like, holy crap! If they get this before the 2-minute warning, they could get a stop. Like, it wasn't. That was the thing. They weren't even totally out of it. And for all the people who were like, "Oh, Sam Darnold made the team look better," I disagree completely. And Brock was hurt, and I wouldn't put my quarterback down 21. Hurt. That was almost the same argument we had.
With no offensive lineman.
That was the argument we were having with Jalen during the Cowboys game when he got that weird little concussion. We're like, should we even bring him back in at this point? Like, what's the point? But so yeah, agreed. So I think the Niners will recover fine. They're still the favorites in the NFC. They're the team we can trust the most in the NFC by far. Like,
Agreed.
For sure. So we'll talk about.
We've talked about the Niners enough now. It's time to move on to the Eagles.
That was the game of the week, and it was worth it. This game, this team is still in disarray. So you're right. The Eagles played against the New York Giants and came away with a victory, 33-25. It came down to literally the last play, which it shouldn't have. I think with the Eagles, I did find, at least on the defensive side of the ball, things where I'm like, okay, this is going to be better once we get into the playoffs. When we have Slay back, Avonte Maddox will be playing next week, which is great. I'm so excited. I'm ready for him to get back. So we'll start with the defensive side of the ball. What I noticed that was good was Keely Ringo played awesome. Our young guys played awesome. Keely Ringo did a good job on the edge. He's getting good moments, and this is from a guy who didn't play a defensive snap until week 13. So
Yeah.
to come in, he was the youngest player in the entire draft class. He got drafted at 20, and the expectations were, okay, he's a project player, and he didn't look that good in preseason. He didn't even look that good when he came in against Dallas in week 13. And I was like, oh man, we shouldn't. If this is the guy that we have to put out there, we're in a really bad spot. And he's come out and he's played really well. Granted, he hasn't played the elite of the elite teams, even though against DK he did really well against DK. So that's a promising
That's
sign.
an elite receiver.
That's a promising sign. So, and then when they took him off DK and put Bradbury on him, it showed the complete thing. And that was the one issue with this game. I did notice that they had Keely Ringo and Eli Ricks, our two rookies, on the outside. And then we were playing Bradbury predominantly in the slot. Now, I don't mind that move because that's kind of a demotion in the sense of like, okay, you're going to get burned on the outside and we can make some disguises with you in coverage. And I don't mind that because Bradbury's a bigger corner and they tried to put him on Darren Waller. But then when they did that at the very last possession, he got cooked twice. He got burned twice. He's getting picked on. So my biggest wonder, like what's going to happen when Slay comes back and Avonte Maddox is healthy now, is do we even play him? Like I wouldn't even play him regular minutes. I don't mind him and Maddox switching in situationally because that keeps guys fresh. I wouldn't even mind that. So I think moving forward, I'd like to see, because Slay is going to get 4 weeks of rest. He'll be back by playoffs, so he'll miss the next 2 weeks for sure. But that's going to help. I'm convinced that's going to help because he's older, he's aging, so he'll just be fresh for the playoffs. So so Slay on the outside, Ringo on the other side, and then you can shuffle in Maddox, Ricks, Bradbury, or even go with Maddox and Bradbury at the same time for the four corners. So it's like we're starting to kind of piece together a little bit on the corner side, which is really nice. And linebacker wise, Shaquille Leonard had a decent game, a pretty good game. I'm not gonna say, oh, this was a record, this was a great game, but he did a lot better than how he performed in Seattle. He's a much better coverage defender, much better coverage linebacker than Moreau or Cunningham. So he should definitely see some snaps. Both Moreau and Cunningham are questionable, but should be able to come back this week, is what they're saying. And Ben Van Sumeren, that our undrafted rookie linebacker, played good snaps too. So I was really happy with the young, in the weakest spots, those guys kind of stepped up a little bit. In ways that I was a little bit nervous to see, but against games like in these, the Giants, Cardinals, Giants, this is the time to experiment. This is the time to kind of figure out who we can rely on going into the playoffs when we play these tougher teams. So those were the positives that I kind of noticed defensively. What I had issues with was we shouldn't have allowed that deep bomb to Darius Slayton. That gave them way too much momentum, especially when the one thing was when our offense finally figured it out, and I'm about to relay on the offense for a second here, but whenever our offense was trying to put it away, the defense, who was doing really well to begin with, was allowing them to come back in it, and that's an issue with the pass rush, which is scaring me now. We're 17 weeks into the season now, 16, but week 17 now, and our pass rush has half the amount of sacks that we got last year. And so we're going from 70 to 35, and that's 15th in the league. This was supposed to be our bread and butter. We're supposed to have this figured out. Now, I understand we have younger guys. Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter have hit that wall because they haven't played this many snaps before. They've been trying to do that. They weren't even on the field in the last possession. They didn't see the field. Jalen Carter only played 19 snaps. I don't know if they're just because they're trying to keep him as fresh as possible for playoffs. So that might be something to look out for, maybe a lingering injury that we don't know about. But all in all, there was a lot more good than bad in this game. Hassan Reddick got called for another BS, what's it called, roughing the passer call during those last drives. I don't understand why we have to get a roughing the passer call every single time we're letting the other team drive on the last possession possible. That needs to stop. That keeps bugging me. Pisses me off. But our third down defense, we were 4 for 12, so improvement there. Again, I understand the competition, but I will take that win. A win is a win. And there was good things on the offense too, right? So we can talk about those disgusting decisions like the Eagles as a collective had a mental brain lapse from the last 2 minutes of the first half until basically the start of the fourth quarter. It was just a nightmare of decisions. Like, we start with Kenneth Gainwell. So we're up 17-3. We're cruising. Everything's looking great. I'm like, oh, we're back to Eagles football. We're looking good. And last 2 minutes go, we're driving. We're trying to, get some points on the board. So Kenneth Gainwell has a big run. We're inside the 50 now. He gets a big run. Great. Gets another one. On this one, he fumbles. So when the runner fumbles and the ball goes out of bounds, the clock doesn't stop because the player wasn't out of bounds. The ball went out of bounds. I don't know if Nick Sirianni just didn't know that was a thing or probably just forgot, but we let time run off the clock. We didn't call a timeout. And Jalen was confused. He was like, are we calling a timeout in this situation? Like, what are we doing here? So we let 18 seconds go off the clock. Great. Hated that. And then we run again. We run again a couple times, waste the timeout. And then it's 3rd and 10 and we're trying to get whatever points we can. And Jalen runs free. He gets a good breakaway. Like, oh, great. We'll get a short field goal. Maybe if he gets out of bounds, we can run maybe one more play, right? We have 13 seconds at this point. Then Jalen cuts back in. Instead of going out, he cuts back in. And then
that was wild.
I don't understand what was going on. I don't know if he didn't know that, he didn't have a timeout left. I'm just sure that was just a mental brain fart on his part. He didn't know that we're out. And you can't be doing that. Again, it's the Giants. That's fine. You can get away with that. But in the playoffs, you can't. And we got really lucky that, and I texted you about this, the Eagles either get away with the weirdest or we see some of the weirdest calls that don't normally happen in games with the Eagles. So I think his name was Okereke, the defensive, the linebacker for the Giants. So Jalen gets down inbounds, but then the Giants linebacker holds on to the ball and doesn't give it up. Blatantly, in front of the ref. The ref is right
Just
there,
dumb.
dude. He's just holding on. He's rolling around on the ball, and they call him. I was so confused. I was saying, I'm like, he's holding it. I don't know what happens here. And they were like, oh, they called it a delay a game for the defense, so it stops the clock, and the Eagles get away. And the Eagles get away with 3 points. And I was like, I had never seen this happen before in a game. So I was like, okay, we got away with that one. And Jalen was like, my bad, I'm an idiot type thing, right? And then we get the ball to start the third. On the kickoff, at first I thought Olamide Zaccheaus just ran straight into Boston Scott and it led to a fumble, and I was like, what was happening here? But then when they did the replay, Isaiah Simmons literally pushed Olamide Zaccheaus into Boston Scott in a way where he was just he just found a new way to tackle by using his own player against him. And I don't know what was going on there. That was just bad, right? So
yeah.
And at that point, they had benched Tommy DeVito because he was not, he wasn't doing it. The Eagles had his number, and they put in Tyrod Taylor. And things are bad when you're with your defense. When you're worried about Tyrod Taylor. I was worried, and I'm like, I shouldn't be worried about this. So they get a short field, they score, great. So we're driving on the next possession. And Dallas Goedert slips, and it leads to a pick six by Adoree Jackson. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, why would he slip? That sucks. You're only human. I get it. It happens. But if he doesn't slip, it's at least a catch or a contested catch. And, it's routine. But of course that happens, right? All of a sudden, it goes from 20-3 to 20-18 in a blink. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, what the hell is going on here? This is really, really bad. And
yeah.
I don't. So you were watching it with me. You were giving me some messages. What did you think about that? When it looked like they were collapsing, what were you thinking?
I was thinking against the Giants it'll work, but against anybody you're going to see in the playoffs, you're doomed.
Yeah,
and that's kind of where I'm at, because the thing is, you guys could play an absolute perfect game the next 2 weeks, but it won't matter to fans. It won't matter to anybody outside of the actual team, because the two teams you guys play one is the same team and the other is also garbage. well, I say garbage, but the Cardinals are not a great team,
Yeah.
right? And so by no means is anybody going to be convinced that Eagles football is back, baby. You know what I mean? So I look at the mistakes that were made in this game. Some of just the brain farts, simple as that. I mean, it was these plays where they just weren't using their head, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, how the hell was this team 10-1 at one point? Mind you, I was questioning that record going into that point. But by no means did I think the Eagles were the team that they're performing as right now, if that makes sense. This is not the Eagles team that we came to expect this year. This is not the Eagles team that it's almost like they got comfortable with their record. They got comfortable with the idea that they can win any game regardless of what happens in the first half, right? Because there were so many situations where they came back and won a game after being down and almost considered out of the game, right? They came back and they're like, oh, that's it. You know, the Eagles just coming back like normal. And it's like they got comfortable being in that situation. And so there's never this idea that they need to perform right out of the gate. And so I'm just seeing these same mistakes week in and week out.
And just like I mentioned with just like I mentioned with the defense, like we are in week 17 now. You kind of are what you are if nothing changes at this time, right? So the Eagles have been doing this to themselves the whole season. They have been making decisions that they never would have made last year. They're calling screens that don't make sense and still don't work. And
those need to stop. Yeah. Those screenplays need to stop.
The biggest issue is that we don't have an answer for. I don't understand why. This is where it comes back to coaching, right? They don't have an answer for when teams want to blitz. When teams send a free runner to Jalen, he's completing only like 45% of his passes, because the only other options that they have, they're like, oh, how do we combat this? Oh, let's do a screen. Oh, let's do a QB run. Those are the only options that they give him. And then, so even though there's tons of other options they could do to do it, they still haven't bothered to kind of come up with a scheme to combat this. And that's something I want to see in the next couple weeks here, because that is kind of the strategy is, blitz the crap out of Jalen Hurts, and because the offense refuses to have an answer for him. So I'm very interested to see if maybe we can just come up with just a couple of bailout plays for that. But I didn't think this was a bad Jalen game in general, because again, that interception was fluky. It sucks. He's one interception away from the franchise, high for a season, which just isn't good. It's just, and again, he's not playing like a $50 million quarterback, so I can't be like this lenient on him. But I'm watching a lot of the stuff and I'm thinking, this isn't all Jalen Hurts, and this is a mixture of when last year you see growth when you are in a system long enough. And I think that's what makes Kyle Shanahan awesome, is because, and like coaches like McDaniel, McVay, like the offensive minded coaches, right? What makes them awesome is they're not going to get poached. They're not going to take away your head coach. You can take away an offensive coordinator, you can take away a defensive coordinator. So when Shane Steichen left, Shane Steichen was the only coordinator that Jalen had spent more than one season with through any point, college or professional. So you finally have a sense of stability, and then it's gone, and you can't just expect it to be the same. And there was a learning curve. They're doing similar things, but they're not operating the same. Shane Steichen had a few more counter punches, and for some reason it's like they don't have any this year, and it doesn't make any sense to me. And I think they're starting to figure out bits and pieces. What's frustrating me the most is just that we're not giving Jalen enough layups. We gave him so many layups last year to simplify the game a little bit, and it seems like we just went away from that. I think there was a stat like 2 weeks ago when there were like completion percentages on passes over like expected, meaning like he has this completion. So he was completing 66% of his passes in tight window throws. When last year so he was completing throws of super high difficulty this year that he wasn't having to throw last year. And because guys aren't being schemed as open as they were last year. But the numbers offensively don't suggest that the offense has fallen off, because if they look at like EPA per drive, things of that nature, the Eagles' offensive this year compared to last year are almost identical. And a product of that is the Eagles didn't play a single top 5 defense last year. That's just how it went. We didn't, and then we didn't play many top 5 offenses either. So it was easy to blow out teams. We were like the Cowboys this year, right? In the sense that we got cookie cutter competition and we dominated them.
Yeah.
But this year we've had to play 5 games where we've had top 5 offenses or top 10 offenses. We've played 4 top 10, top 5 defenses, and yet the offense has still found ways to succeed. So it's like, but then you watch a game like this past game against the Giants, and they don't look consistent. Devontae Smith even came out and said that they're not happy with where they're at. They're not happy with where they're at as a team. And yeah, he said, yeah, we're 11-4, but we don't like how we're playing right now. We're not looking good. This isn't the standard that we have for ourselves, and that's the product of making the Super Bowl. That's the issue of making it and not winning, because the expectations are just so high. These guys are hitting a level where they're not having fun playing football anymore. And you can see it. Like, this team used to just, they looked like they were having tons of fun. And now, even just during the losing streak, everything just seems like a struggle. They're working for everything. Nothing seems fun. So the vibes are still tough. And that needs to change going into the playoffs, because if you're the lower vibe team, like, it's like, that doesn't bode well for you.
Yeah. So I've got 2 questions for you, but I'm going to ask you the first one, let you answer, and then I'm going to ask you the second one. So there's issues with Jalen. There's issues with Sirianni and maybe some of the decisions he makes. Who do you believe in more at this point in your Eagles, fandom? Do you believe more in Jalen Hurts as a quarterback going forward, or do you believe more in Nick Sirianni as a head coach?
Jalen. And I just, it's the coach's job to put the player in a position to succeed, put the team in a position to succeed. And I still believe in Nick Sirianni as a coach. Like, he's had the best record through 3 seasons as an Eagles head coach ever, and has had success. And but Dougie P won a Super Bowl and was out the year after. So it's like,
right.
And he is kind of the polar opposite of Jalen in just kind of demeanor. Nick Sirianni is very in your face. Jalen is the calm, cool, collected guy. The team follows the lead of Jalen more than they follow the lead of Sirianni. But not to say that the team doesn't like Sirianni. I think that a leader, when you have those kind of alter egos, you need that guy who can hype you up. But you also need a guy who can. Nick even admitted it last week that, he needs to tone it down a notch. He needs to be less intense. He needs to, be more in the moment, because sometimes he can get a little out of control, and you don't want that from your head coach sometimes. Like, you want it. It's good when it works, but then, you see those kind of calmer guys, and those guys, can lead a team just a little bit more. And I believe, Nick Sirianni's the kind of guy that if you're in that room, you'll probably want to run through a wall for him. But when you're getting that same level all the time, and you feel like he's only that one level, it can be a little tough. That's why they love Jalen, because they already know what they're going to get out of Jalen. And I'm sure he's completely different around the team than what he gives us. He's pretty crass with the media. He's kind of a douche to the media. Like, he doesn't really, if he doesn't, he doesn't really like to answer these questions. He's not gonna. He's a very accountable player. People were dissing him on the comments where he's like, I don't think we're committed enough. And I don't, and in the heat of the moment, sometimes you don't think about what you're saying. Sometimes I don't think that was such a bad quote. Like,
I don't think so.
When your leader's saying, I don't think we're committed enough, he knows the standard. He sets the standard. He takes that on his own as a leader. And he even came back later and said that, like, I hold myself to that standard. We're, as a team, we're not committed enough, but that falls on me. So it's like, People just want to question him. He's a 25-year-old guy too, and it's his his third full season in the league. So he's still so young, just like in Brock's situation. Like he's so young, but he's so even keeled as a leader, and people respect him so much. So I know the guys in the locker room don't care like how he comes off in the media because they know what they're getting from Jalen. So I just believe in Jalen more. I don't think he's like Carson Wentz, because Carson Wentz was a diva in the locker room, and he was entitled. He wasn't a team player. Like I think if Marcus Mariota, and like Jalen's been in that situation too, where like the backup has gone in and won games that you couldn't, and yet what did you do? You went and improved yourself. Carson Wentz got all butthurt that Nick Foles won the Super Bowl because he wanted credit for it. Like it was evident. It was really bad.
Straight diva.
And I was like, I don't want this guy anymore. It sucked. So
I remember that.
So yeah, I believe in Jalen. If I had to pick between the two, so
that's good. So then my next question, I should know the answer to this, but I'm just making sure.
Mm-hmm.
Who needs the other more? Does Jalen need Sirianni more, or does Sirianni need Jalen more?
I think Sirianni needs Jalen more. I think it goes hand in hand, right? Like you can find a good coach to pair with the player, but Nick Sirianni doesn't call the plays. So
exactly.
It's like, so it'd be different if like, if I were to ask you the question of who needs who more, does Purdy need Kyle Shanahan more? Does Kyle Shanahan need Purdy more? At this point of his career, I would think it would be Purdy needs Kyle more. Just now, right? And because he's young.
Absolutely.
So, but despite Jalen being this young, the success has come from Jalen's improvement and the team's improvement. They got AJ Brown, like they built a team, right? So you still have this roster and you switch out the coach, you can still make that work. So, and that's where I think that I'm like, in this particular situation, Nick needs Jalen more than.
And the reason I asked you that is because when I look at the Niners, and I'm just going to bring them into the picture for 2 seconds here. When I look at the Niners, it is evident that Purds does need Kyle Shanahan in the way that he schemes things for every individual player. He does it for Christian McCaffrey. He does it for Debo, for Kittle, for Ayuk, and he does it for Purdy. He knows how to put players in a winning position and a winning situation more often than not. So, the reason I ask you that is because there is a part of me that believes, because of Philadelphia tendencies, there's a part of me that believes Sirianni could be on the move next year if we're seeing the same, things from this Eagles team come midway through next year.
I do think that, and I don't completely disagree with your point, because I do think, like, let's say, for example, let's say we lose one of these next 2 games in an ugly fashion, and then we get bounced round 1 in the wild card, right? That's going to open up a lot of questions. Now, he's not going to get let go. I do think that he will get at least 1 more year's worth of a leash, because he has earned the benefit of the doubt. When you make the Super Bowl in your second year, like, that's awesome. Like, you have a formula and you got there. So now you can take that formula and just kind of work with it. But teams kind of do fall in love with, what worked last year? Like, let's see if we can build off that. And then they don't have any counterpunches. That's been the Eagles' biggest issue. And the guys are frustrated because I know they know that they can play better, and I don't know if they know the answer either. But again, that's the beautiful thing about playing in Philly, and the awful part about playing in Philly, is when the Philly fans will adore you so long as you win. So long as you if you deliver them a quality product, they will back you. But when you're playing like this,
off of his head,
it's tough. Like, they're the toughest critics. They're booing when they're up after a drive stalls a few times, and that's not even because they're losing or because the team, because they hate this team. It's because they're like, we know you're better than this.
Yep.
And we know that we know that you're better than this.
Very high standard. Yes.
It's ridiculous. So the standard in Philly is tough. It's a tough place to play, and it's mentally, it can be tough knowing that those expectations are always on you. And And I think that's what's driving these players. They want to be better. They know this. So it's just a matter of, can they really find it? And there are going to be, regardless of how successful we are, there needs to be changes in the offseason. We need to bring in like a senior offensive advisor or maybe a new offensive coordinator. I don't think that's the fix, but we need to get more voices in the room that can help answer these questions. Like Matt Patricia was the senior defensive advisor for Sean Desai. You bring him in as the de facto DC. They're still not calling him that, which is stupid, but you're seeing different changes, and although maybe the results are a little different, you like that there's something that's a different voice in the locker room. It's something that can provide some sort of change, some sort of spark. And I think the Eagles historically are known to be loyal to internal development because they like that. They don't want to bring someone from the outside who they can't trust, and I don't blame that logic. But at the same time, they're bringing in a coordinator who's in his third full year in the league in general in terms of coaching, and he's all of a sudden calling plays for your offense, and you can't really expect that to be great, even though the result, again, you read between the lines, the numbers say that the offense hasn't fallen off as much, but the product that you see on the field looks clunky, inconsistent, and it just doesn't make any sense sometimes. So with Steichen, it looked so smooth because that product, they learned, they got to stick with the system. So Brian Johnson is a head coaching candidate this year, apparently. So it's just like, if he leaves, like, good for him. I don't know how successful he's going to be, and I wish him all the best. But like him and Jalen still have ties, so I think that helps. But they need to figure something out. Something needs to be. They need to come up with just a different system in that sense. And Nick Sirianni needs to find answers too, because this is his system that they're trying to work off of.
So, building off that finding answers, there's 2 more weeks until the playoffs start. Marcos, what do you need to see out of this Eagles team? I don't care who's on the other side of the ball. What do you need to see from the Eagles that will give you a little bit more hope going into the playoffs? Because I'm sure right now you're not the most confident you've been in this team.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I'm a generally optimistic human being, and I like to be objective, and I like to look at the brighter side of things. I know, the Philly mentality isn't really how I feel. I just understand it and I appreciate it and I love it.
We couldn't do this podcast if you had the Philly mentality.
Exactly. So it's like, I see it from all sides. I try to just, keep it as realistic as I can. But I'm also the guy that's like, if my team's doing great, I'm going to back them. I love them. Yes, they're doing great. Yes, I'm pissed right now. I'm mad. And, I want to see, if I'm going to have any confidence, I just want to see that there's consistency and good decision making and just good plays. Like I need to see something a little different than what I've been seeing. I want the team to blow a team out too. Like, if we could just win by at least 10 points here, look good, win by 10 here, and then blow the crap out of the Giants in meeting 2, and also get away healthy, because we're going to MetLife on our last game, and that stadium scares me, and I don't know what to think. So we just need to get out of MetLife healthy, and I'll feel good about that one. But this game in particular against the Cardinals, Kyler's a fun matchup. He's been sick, but he will be playing. So we just need to go out and just body this team and ruin Jonathan Gannon's homecoming. Just crap on him. That'll make me feel so much better. The Eagles got the non-style points win against a bad team. They just got to win. Now let's add some style points. Now let's get a win that we can be proud of, that we feel like is a little more our standard, even if it's not the truest standard because of the opponent we're playing. Something that we're like, okay, this is our blueprint now. We get our mojo back. That's what would make me happy. So,
how worried are you about the 1 seed?
I'm surprisingly a little bit more confident in it now. So let's move into this. So I think that's enough Eagles talk in that sense. I was curious because I wanted to ask you this. So, based off of how the playoffs are laid out right now, so the game we have to watch this weekend is going to be the big one against the Cowboys and the Lions. Now, if the Lions win, they will have the 2 seed. not locked up, because if the Eagles and the Lions end up tying, the Eagles will have the strength of schedule record. But just as of that weekend, as of this weekend, the Lions would have the 2 seed. If the Cowboys win, and if the Lions win, the Eagles win the NFC East. That'd be great. If the Lions win, if the Cowboys win, the Lions are guaranteed the 3 seed, and the Eagles will have the 2 seed unless the Niners lose and the Eagles win out. And I wanted to talk to you about that too, because you should be rooting for the Rams to win this weekend, which they most likely will, playing the Giants, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if the Rams win, they're locked in at number 6, meaning they don't have to play for anything against the Niners.
Right. Exactly.
Meaning I'm benching Stafford, I'm benching Kupp, I'm benching everybody I can.
Bench Puka, man. Just give
Seriously.
me Tutu Atwell at that point.
Bench everybody, because you're gonna get. And if the Cowboys win and the Rams win, we're destined to have the Jared Goff, Matt Stafford, LA Detroit reunion for both of them. That's gonna be the most fun storyline of the week, I think. That would be an awesome game to see.
That would be awesome.
That'd be awesome. Like homecoming for Matt Stafford, but Jared Goff gets to play against his team. It's going to be at Detroit. Yeah. Like Detroit's first playoff game is going to be very much like the Kings' first playoff game. It's going to be electric. It's going to be wild. They're guaranteed a home playoff game to start. So I'm excited for that matchup in general.
Remember when I made that comparison, Beam Team and Lions, at the beginning of this all? Anyway, we'll get on that.
No, you're great. So as it stands right now, Niners are number 1 and would play the winner of Bucks Cowboys based off of how it is, and I still think the Eagles are going to win out. So it's looking like it's going to be Bucks Cowboys. And considering how the Bucks are playing, dude, I don't know if the Cowboys are going to be able to go in there and like steal this game. Like, it's going to be tough. The Bucks are awesome. Bake show, dude.
They really are.
They're cooking right now. They found their rhythm, so that's going to be a fun game too. And then the Eagles are slated to play the Seahawks right now. The Seahawks lose and like the Vikings win or the Packers win, then it's one of them, which would be interesting. I kind of want to play the Seahawks again. I'm not going to lie to you. We can beat that freaking team, dude. And the fact that we just haven't yet in the Pete Carroll era pissed me off. And even with Geno, I still think we can beat this team, especially Slay didn't play either, so a couple weeks of rest and then we get him back, and our offense will be better because their defense isn't that great, let's be honest. So, but I wanted to ask you, so let's say in theory, what would you, because if you were the 2 seed, right, you would get, so let's say you were the 2 seed, let's say the Eagles and the Niners flip, right? That means the Eagles would have to play in Philly the winner of the Cowboys and Bucks. They get the bye, which is always valuable for any team, especially a team like the Niners or the Eagles who could get healthier. So as the 2 seed, how much more confident would you feel if you had to play the Seahawks, who you own, and have to go up against the Lions or the Rams, and you've also pretty much owned the Rams. But this, the Rams now would be fun, and then you would have to go play Philly most likely. Would you feel more confident in that versus having to play Dallas than Philly back to back? Or would you just, because the fact that you've roasted both Dallas and Philly, you feeling pretty good about playing Dallas and Philly again?
You know what's actually interesting is on the road, the Cowboys are still shit, right? But with how little success, how zero success the Cowboys have had playing the Niners in the playoffs as of, let's just say, the last 5 years. I just feel like I don't want to match up with them this time around. I feel like they're going to bring a little bit more into it. And especially if the Niners struggle with these last 2 games and maybe show some weaknesses going in. I could see the Cowboys kind of ending that road scenario. But I am afraid of playing the Lions, considering I haven't played the Lions at all. That the Niners haven't seen the Lions, and I don't even know.
I was thinking about that.
I don't know what that would look like.
I think if there was a surprise team, because defensively they can't stop you, but if there was an offense that could actually surprisingly keep up, I actually think it might be them. Like out of
It
all of them,
could very well.
especially with your unfamiliar, nature with them, you don't know what you're gonna get,
Yeah,
and it's even if it was at Levi's, that's different than Jared Goff played in Cali, like he knows what it's like to play in California. It's
right.
different than versus if he had to go to Philly and play in the cold and it's mucky and something. That's completely different. Um, and even I still think the Niners would be favored. Let's say, for example, the Lions win out and the Niners and Eagles mess up and like they end up with the 1 seed. And if the Niners had to go to the Dome, I'm still confident that the Niners would be favored. But that would be scary. That would be a tough matchup to play. And they are going to get guys back on the defensive end, like CJ Gardner Johnson is supposed to be coming back for them, and Aiden Hutchinson is awesome, but that's kind of all they really got. So their defense has been up and down. So, but like the Lions are kind of sneaky. I don't think they're. I don't think. I don't know who I would pick between them and the Rams. I think everyone's falling a little too in love with the Rams, even though the Rams have played like everyone's argument for the Rams' recent success is that they played the Ravens. They took the Ravens to OT, so they can keep up with the Ravens, so they can keep up with anybody, even though they got dusted
Right.
by the Eagles and the Niners. I don't know. So I think that if there was like the Eagles at the 2 seed, I'm actually not as worried about playing the Lions because number one, we have had recent success against the Lions. Although I do think they could run all over us. Their rush offense is awesome. They have the second best offensive line in the league. I've been saying that since the beginning of the season. Like I believed in their O-line like from the jump. So and now Jahmyr Gibbs is coming into his own. Like Amon-Ra is who we knew he was going to be, and they seem to have like every piece, and their tight end Laporta, breaking out this year. So it's like they have all the pieces necessary to like be a problem for anybody that they face in the playoffs. So I think the Lions are being underrated, but they're also in that situation where like if they lose, it doesn't matter because they made it. 30 years of not even making it in the playoffs, like it doesn't matter to them. It was like the Kings, like, yeah, we were bummed that we lost the 7-game series, but just getting there in the first place was just like a magical feeling. So
Yeah.
So I don't think that it's going to be different if the Lions lose versus if like the Cowboys lose in the first round. They're going to be like, this was a complete waste of the season. Like we're going to have to blow this up. Do we even pay Dak even though he played well? Like what do we do? It's going to be a nightmare.
Yeah, I think the more I think about it, like to really answer it, the more I think about it, the only team the Niners haven't played in the true playoff picture right now is the Lions. Everybody else in that the Niners have beat.
This is
So
true,
for
actually.
for me personally, like I'm and beat pretty handily, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I look at it and I'm like, the Lions are the last question mark. And it's not even a question of can we blow them out? It's a question of I don't even know how we'll match up with them because they are similar in a lot of ways to the way the Niners are built. They're not necessarily a better team, but they're not necessarily like a worse team than anybody else in that picture. It's not a team you want to mess around with. And that's kind of the fun part about the NFC playoff picture right now is there's no team in there that's like, oh, pushover. Like the biggest pushover, it's probably the Rams. Like, but it's hard because it's like
that's tough.
It's between the Rams, the Bucks, and the Seahawks.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that's what it comes down to. And those three are so close, and none of them are necessarily an easy takedown on any given Sunday, Monday, or Thursday. So
exactly.
It's gonna be fun. I would, if I had to really answer it, give me the same teams that we beat the shit out of earlier this year.
All right, so yeah, you want to stay locked in on that 1 seed. You'll have a good chance. I mean, so long as you win this weekend, you'll be good. Because the Rams won't play you. So you get the Commanders who are literally last in every defensive category possible. So I think the Commanders won't provide that same level. I think this is a great bounce back opportunity for you guys, to say the least. But if the Rams lose, that's going to be real interesting if the Giants somehow pull it off. That'd be interesting for the Eagles too, because it'd be like, oh crap, the Giants are going to want to play spoiler, and yeah, but I think at this point we're destined for the 1 and 2 seed, which I also think for the sake of our podcast and for our content is going to be the best scenario that plays out.
We picked the two good teams to do this with, man. Imagine
Yeah.
if like, I don't even want to think about it.
Yeah, you know what we should do
This is perfect.
next year? What we should do is we should pick outside of our two teams. We should just pick one team from the NFC and one team from the AFC to just follow, just keep track of. We're like, we think this team's good. Like, well, let's see how they do this year.
I actually really like that idea.
I think that'd be interesting. But either way, yeah, in the NFC, because I'd feel more. Yeah, if we were the 5th seed, it would suck for me because I do believe that if we had to go, we could beat the Bucks. I'm not worried about that part. I mean, considering how our team is played, but but we've beaten them before, so I'm not as worried.
Right.
But I want the Seahawks smoke so bad, dude. I want redemption for that one because we should have won that game.
I feel that.
And we are going to play better. I already know we will play better because we couldn't have played worse. And that's just how
I feel about the Ravens.
Yeah, I'm telling you, dude. So I would love
and the Eagles of last year.
Yeah, and I want to match up. I kind of want to see the Lions again. I think that'd be fun.
Yeah.
I don't want the Rams. I don't know why. I think because of the way they play offense. I don't think the Rams could beat the Lions. If I had to pick, I'd pick the Lions.
Yeah.
But if they beat the Lions, that means their offense is cooking, and that offense versus our defense is not that scary to me. That's scary with how inconsistent we can be. So I don't want to look too far ahead because first we got to look like we can be a consistent freaking team in the first place. But in this exercise, I would want to be the 2 seed at worst because I'd be okay with the 1 seed because that means bye. That I will take that, and I will take a date with Dallas if I have to. Like, at least it's at Philly. I feel more confident in Philly anyways. With the Niners, it doesn't matter because I feel this way after playing the Chiefs, but the Chiefs haven't been like that way either. But like, if we I just felt like some of the games we won this year makes me feel like we can win anywhere if we just freaking bring our A game. So, so if we have to go to Levi's, I'm not as worried. I mean, like, it's not going to matter either way to me in that sense. Like, it's going to be a ridiculously tough game from the Eagles' perspective. So I don't know. Like, 2 seed, play the Seahawks, play the Lions, play the Niners, and if we earn it, then we earn it. But if, to get to the NFC Championship game, I think it'll be a letdown. But I think given how the season finished, all of a sudden it wouldn't feel like such a letdown to make it to the NFC title game because I don't think that anybody believes that this team can get there right now. So to get there would be, I'd consider that like an okay. We already knew we had questions going into the playoffs, but the fact that we made it this far, we can try and answer those questions in the offseason.
For sure. So, final thoughts on football in general.
Look out for the Browns. That's my final thought. They're nasty.
That's annoying.
Joe Flacco,
I hate
dude.
you, Joe Flacco.
Imagine if it's a Joe Flacco versus the Niners Super Bowl.
Don't put that in my head. No.
I'm telling you, dude.
Like, I don't want that.
I don't want that either. I want Lamar to win one. But if I
don't want him to win one.
I mean, outside of I was like, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Over in the AFC, I should say.
No, bro. Flacco in the past 4 weeks. Holy crap. That man's been balling.
It's like he's 30 again. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
It's stupid. And weeks ago, he was just playing football in the park with his dad and his brother.
Yeah, exactly. Staying in shape. To think the Jets passed up on him, too.
They messed up.
And they dominated the Jets without Amari, too. Like, Amari's nasty with him. So, whatever. So, look out for the Browns. That's my final thought because, like, the AFC playoff race is going to be wild. I don't even know what's happening there right now. KC is going to be out of there completely if they lose. The Bills are annoying because they're not that good. I don't care. Like, the Bills, everyone's going to talk about, oh, Josh Allen's third in MVP. Shut up. No, he's not. Like, I don't like that. And I think the Dolphins are fun, but they're not. They're going to get cooked in the playoffs. I think the Ravens will show it this weekend. But then again, who knows? Maybe the Ravens drop this one and, it'll add a little more intrigue. The Dolphins need the number 1 seed. Like if they don't get the no,
And
yeah,
I'll actually be pissed off if the Dolphins win this game against the Ravens because this week, like I was saying, credit the Ravens where it's due. They played like one of the more dominating teams in football. So if they drop this game against the Dolphins, who I do not believe are one of the more dominating teams in football, offensively, sure. Defensively, I'm not sold, and I'm not sold on that whole team. If they drop this game, I'm going to be pissed. It's like I don't even want to make a comparison.
I know how you feel. All right. So speaking of being pissed,
Oh my God.
inconsistencies. So we're gonna finish here, and it's not gonna be a long combo because there's not much that's changed since the last time we talked about our Bean team, our Sacramento Kings. Listen, guys, we're the fifth seed right now, right? 17-12 or 13, 17, 13. Like we're doing fine,
Sure.
but like, dude, we're it. I don't know if it's the expectations that like us as fans just put on this team, but we gotta be better than this, dude. Like we've had so many opportunities to be better, and like we're just not, and it bugs the crap out of me because it feels like it to me. It feels like we're the 11th seed right now. It doesn't feel like we're the 5th seed, you know?
Yeah, it's bugging me because we at this point last year, the day before Christmas, if I remember right, we got blown out by somebody. And then we rebounded with another game. I say rebounded. We played another game after that against the Nuggets and got blown out again. And at that point, we were just above 500. I want to say we were like 17-15. I don't have the stats on me. I didn't do the research. I apologize. But we were in a situation where we were like, all right, because we hadn't made the playoffs in however many years, we were in this situation where we're above 500. And that was always the goal, it seemed, for at least the past, let's say 5 or 6 years. We were like, to be above 500 means we're a winning team. And that's all we want to be right now because a winning team is a recipe for playoffs.
Because we were never above 500.
Right. And so it was this goal, right? And we hit that goal and we made the playoffs. And now it's like we're 17 and what was it, Marcos? 17-13?
Yeah, 17-13.
And we're the 5th seed in the West. And we're looking at it and we're like, we've lost 13 games. And I think 6 of those have been over 20 points.
Yeah.
I want to say.
It's garbage.
And I think last year we lost 5 or 4 games in the entire 82
4
games in the entire 82 game season by 20 or more. And that's just it's weird to me. It's weird how inconsistent this team is right now. There's one thing this team is lacking other than defense on the offensive end, believe it or not, is another shot creator. We need somebody who can develop something out of absolutely nothing, because the unfortunate part that is starting to show is we have a lot of sitting ducks on the 3-point line who, when they're on, top team in this league, absolute top team in this league. When they're off, we're a bottom tier team in this league. Yeah. And it really is a hit or a miss. And it's not good that any team should be able to, other than the Warriors, rely on the 3 to win or lose a game as consistently as we are. We've completely gone away from the inside aspect of the game. Our percentage in terms of where we're driving to the rim versus looking for an outside shot has completely diminished. Like, we are averaging almost as many 3-point shots as we are inside attempts, which is insane. And especially when that's dropping, you see this time and time again. This team will go down in a game by like 6 points when they were just up 6. It's a 12-point swing. And if you weren't watching the previous 6 points, you're like, oh, it's a 6-point game. The Kings are in this. But it doesn't feel like that to them. And so what do? They come down the court and they shoot a 3, and they shoot a 3, and they shoot a 3. And it's just the same repetitive offensive scheme every time. They go away from what was working, and that's that dribble handoffs. We stop running the the great offense that we've seen from this team and get to this, like, oh my God, there's 2 quarters left in this game and we're down 6. We got to heave up 3 after 3 after 3. It's not working. So we need somebody who's going to get us a bucket other than Foxy and other than Domas
on the inside. Yeah.
on the inside.
Yeah. And another thing we need to fix is the fact that we're just incapable of winning back-to-back games. So we've brought this up before, and I went ahead and did a little research for the past 5 years, and I didn't count the they were over 500 both of these years, but I didn't count the bubble team and the COVID team. So the bubble Lakers and the COVID Bucks of 2020 through 2021. So they were both over 500 in back-to-backs. But when we look at the most recent up to 5 champions prior to, so the 2017-2018 Warriors, they were 9-5 on the second night of back-to-backs. It's not the first night that's been our issue. It's the second night. We're 0-4 on the second night of back-to-backs this season so far. So the Warriors of 17-18 were 9-5. The Raptors, the year they won the title, were 8-3. The 21-22 Warriors were 10-6, and last year's Nuggets were 7-4. So all above 500 and by a pretty nice margin too. It's just winning back-to-back games is a part of being a good team, and we can't be this inconsistent. And I don't know if it's a personnel issue in the sense of we have too many guards, and these bigger, more physical teams are not afraid to go right at us, and maybe we need to bring in a few more physical players. Like, I would love a Matisse Thybulle. I'd love an Alex Caruso. I would like even a Kyle Kuzma or somebody who can just be physical with other teams and provide a little bit more size, because we are a little small. And that's not the worst issue because of the style we play. It's very much like the Warriors, who rely on a smaller unit, even though they have bigger guards like Clay's 6'7". You got Andrew Wiggins. He's a nice big wing, and then Draymond in his prime was, a smaller guy, but he was physical. So they got to be physical and small and make up for it with a specialty player like Kevon Looney. We're missing a few pieces. It's evident now. Like, there have been too many stretches of Kevin Huerter not playing well, too many stretches of Harrison Barnes disappearing, too many stretches of, man, we need to rely on Malik Monk to put up 20 every night, which sucks. And same with Keegan. And Keegan is still a work in progress, so I'm not going to do anything like that yet. Like, Keegan has shown development. He's exploded for 47. Like, I believe, like, he still has plenty more to go and plenty more to try. And that's going to come with more reps. But in the meantime, we need more help. And guys, our backup big situation is still a problem. We are relying on JaVale McGee and Alex Len. Even I like Alex Len more in the sense of his physicality and his size, but that we still need more help. We need more help. And Trey Lyles is fine, but he's also inconsistent. Sasha is fine. He's learning.
He's also
still.
Small.
Yeah, exactly.
Trey is small, and we've been playing these lengthy teams, which is actually starting to become a trend. Like, we're getting back into not a more traditional big man, but we're almost getting away from that small ball style of basketball again. We're starting to see these unicorn style players. Look at Wemby, right? This is a kind of build that you're going to start seeing a lot more. And we've already seen right now. So this guy, Trey Lyles, a little bit smaller, he's not going to work out more than half the time.
Exactly.
In terms of that matchup.
So just some things to consider. Like, I'm starting to accept it. I'm taking off the rose-colored glasses, the beam-covered glasses, if you will, and realizing, like, we're a good team. Like, we're a good team. We have two all-NBA players on our roster. We did that much. Now it's a matter of really building this roster to be a little bit better. We need a few more pieces. We need our Aaron Gordon, because we have our Jamal Murray in Fox. We have our Jokic in Sabonis, and we have our Porter in Murray. We need that glue. We don't have a glue guy yet. We have 2 do-it-all guys, and we're just missing that last, a couple glue guys, I think. So.
Yeah. And I got to say, I don't think the trade deadline fixes that issue this year. I think with realistically what is out there, without having to give up the 4 guys that you and I have said are untouchable, it's not going to fix our problem. We might be able to get that bench role player. We might be able to get a defensive wing out of it. But if we wanted to get somebody like let's just say somebody like a DeMar DeRozan. I know he's not necessarily the guy we need for this team, but you want to get somebody who's a heavy hitter, somebody where he's going to get the job done. He's going to be that inside threat that we need to get a bucket when the three isn't working. You're going to have to give up either Keegan or Malik. And that's kind of the thing in this. I got to give a warning to Kings fans because you and I are aware of this. It happened already when we traded for Domantas Sabonis. Look, I remember having that text thread with you right after it happened. I was like, there's no freaking way we just traded Tyrese Halliburton.
I was literally crying.
Yeah, we were shook. We were absolutely shook. And the reason we were shook is because that was a move that the Sacramento Kings haven't made in years and years and years. Like almost 12 years.
And it made sense.
At that point. It made sense, but it was hard to come to that conclusion that it was the right move.
Right.
What it ultimately showed, and that I want people to realize, is you got to give up talent to get talent in this league. So there is an unfortunate part in this situation where we could have to part with one of our untouchables. And I promise you it's not going to be Foxy. And I promise you it's not going to be Domas.
It's probably going to be Malik because I don't think Keegan would. Malik's on an expiring contract. He's due a good amount of money. So the problem is, do we want to marry ourselves to Malik as a six man that we're paying $90 million to? And knowing that we have to extend Keegan, we have to extend Foxy again. It's just, these are tough decisions, right? You hope that it works now, but when it doesn't, then you really have to assess these things.
And on an expiring contract, it's not the most appealing thing for another team to trade for, because you're like, well, I can't guarantee that he wants to stick here.
Yeah.
It's
tough.
It's going to be interesting, guys. But the positives from it that you and I can look at, and that all of us can look at, is we are fifth in the Western Conference in an absolutely stacked Western Conference. All the teams above us, we've beaten one time or another. All the teams below us, we've lost to at one time or another. So if they stay behind us, all right, that's fine. Because ultimately, we talk about the issue with the back-to-backs. Come playoff time, there ain't no such thing as a back-to-back.
Correct.
Back-to-backs do not exist in the playoffs or the finals. You don't have to worry about that. So in terms of getting that figured out, it is key, but it's not the key to our ultimate success.
Yeah.
Getting to the playoffs, figuring out how to match up against whoever our first round matchup is going to be the biggest thing.
Yeah.
And health.
Yeah, we just need to stay healthy, and we just need to see that if we can win a playoff series. If we don't win a playoff series this year, then more things have to change. Even more things, I should say. More things
could be bigger.
Yeah. So as a fan, it's weird because we're successful, we're doing great, but we expect more, and we're a little disappointed right now. You can tell in the tone of our voices with the way we're talking about it. We expect more. So it's tough not to be greedy when your team's doing well. So, any final thoughts on the Kings before we, move on here?
Look, how can we just appreciate for 2 seconds, because we are so negative? Can we just appreciate for 2 seconds the fact that the past 16, 17 years, we've been this negative about a team who was however many games back from 500, not looking at a playoff spot, just looking at a potential play-in spot gifted to us, in the last 3 years, potentially. We never actually made it there.
Yeah.
But we are upset. There's issues that need to be addressed, but we have a winning team, and we have a team that's damn fun to watch when they're popping off and when they're playing their top game. And as much as I text that I have lost complete and utter faith in this team, and as much as I scream at my television, punch the wall, throw the dog out the window, I don't actually do that, but those kind of scenarios, it ultimately, I'm happy to be supporting a team that is winning finally and has a winning mentality around it. And I believe in Monty. I believe in Mike. I think we're going to get there.
I agree. So thank you guys for, letting us unpack this episode. This was definitely another lengthy one. As things close in, there's things are getting a lot more important now. So it's hard not to really think about these things going forward.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think I'm good. How about you, brother? You feeling good?
I'm good, man. Just let's go.
Let's do this thing, right? So, with that being said, this was episode 22 of the Behind the Back podcast. You can hit us up at behindthebackpod13@gmail.com. Hit us up on social media, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, X, Facebook, all that fun jazz. Find us on YouTube. Feel free to give us a subscribe, give us a like, follow us on, any of those platforms as well, and leave a comment. Let us know what you want to hear. And, if you disagree with us, please let us know. We'd love to know more. Let us know who your favorite team is so we can crap on them as well. So we'd like that too. So with that being said, I'm Marcos Conan Negron, and beside me here is
Benny the Jet Reds, and y'all have a very happy new year.
indeed.
We hope nothing but success in your new year, unless you're a Cowboys fan or a fan of any team that we don't support.
Hold up. All love. No. Yes, but no,
it's all love.
This has been a great year. Thank you guys for allowing us to start this, during the year 2023, and we hope for more to come in the new year. So, Ben, I will see you next year, brother.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, later. Peace.
Later.